Hi everybody, I'm Jack the Rambling Raconteur, and this is a discussion of The Space Merchants by Frederik Pohl and C.M. Kornbluth. It's from 1953. It's considered part of that golden age science fiction. Kingsley Amis apparently was a huge fan of it. I have it in the Library of America, American Science Fiction Anthology. I have the two 1950s volumes. And it's an interesting book. It's an early science fiction novel, and it has it has a very satirical take on 1950s consumerism, materialism, advertising. So if you're a fan of Mad Men, but you also are interested in like spy fiction and a little bit of space travel and a hint of a dash of environmental consciousness, this is the perfect book for you. I find each of those areas has something to recommend it, and I was fascinated by it. It's a shorter book, and so I read it through this weekend as we were traveling, and it was enjoyable. It was interesting. So very quickly, their world at this point is run by advertising firms that control what are called spherical monopolies. You eat something sugary, so you want something salty, so you want something sugary, and it goes on. But then all that salt means you want to drink something, and so they have these things. They have taken the Indian subcontinent, India and that area, those nations, and they have completely industrialized it. And all of the billing for advertising and marketing for those industries runs through one firm. And so what's up next? The planet Venus. This is 1953, so we haven't sent satellite probes there to learn that we're not going to terraform Venus. Mars, doubtful. Venus, not happening. We haven't achieved space flight yet. And so the book was really interesting from that perspective, how much it gets right, how much it gets wrong, the idea of advertising and consumerism, and how much of that has held true close to 70 years later, where they even, when they do take space flights, they don't have windows to see out anything. The windows are all screens bombarding you with advertisements, and it even those like billboards that change as you drive past them now. Like they're not static; they're digital, and so they'll change into a new billboard. They're like that, so it's really interesting. I'll give you a couple of quick passages. See maybe if you'd be interested in reading it. This is how it begins. As I dressed that morning, I ran over in my mind the long list of statistics, evasions, and exaggerations that they would expect in my report. My section, production, had been plagued with a long series of illnesses and resignations, and you can't get work done without people to do it. But the board wasn't likely to take that as an excuse. I rubbed a depilatory soap over my face and rinsed it with the trickle from the freshwater tap. Wasteful, of course, but I pay taxes, and salt water always leaves my face itchy. Before the last of the greasy stubble was quite washed away, the trickle stopped and didn't start again. I swore a little and finished rinsing with salt. And so you can see something like you have to use salt water in their taps to wash dishes and things. We're later described, this is Mitchell Courtney. We spend the entire book with him. He's a top-level advertiser at probably the biggest firm that's won the contract to go exploit the entire planet of Venus, and they're going to do all the advertising for it, and he's their man. We're told about his apartment, so he's about as wealthy as it gets in this civilization. And his apartment is so small that he takes like a Murphy bed out of the wall to sleep on, and then in the morning he puts it up and he takes down a table that he eats at, and then he has to put the table up to get out of his apartment. And so there's like overpopulation going on, but it's never belabored. It's sort of just, you're given a quick brush strokes to fill it in. So then we get the advertising. Visual was hot. The airbrush and camera people were having fun sculpturing a planet. It was the ultimate in before and after advertising, and they were caught by the sense of history. Development kept pulling rabbits out of hats. Collier once explained to me when I hinted that he might be over-optimistic. It's energy, Mr. Courtney. Venus has got energy. It's closer to the sun. The sun pours all that energy into the planet in the form of heat and molecular bonds and fast particles. Here on Earth, we don't have that kind of level of tappable energy. We use windmills to tap the kinetic energy of the atmosphere. On Venus, we'll use turbines. If we want electricity on Venus, we'll just build an accumulator, put up a lightning rod, and jump back. It's an entirely different level. And so they're trying to advertise in California because of the dense overpopulation there. And again, this is before California truly like exploded in population as it did. So it's just like those parts are fascinating. Now things happen where Courtenay is then sees how the other half live and the other 90 something percent live, and he sees the algae ponds where people like go and daily skim algae to give to these like self-perpetuating protein organisms where they then slice protein to package. So he sees that, and he starts to meet the Consies, the World Conservation Association, who are really concerned that like everything is a disaster on Earth. And this is 1950s, so Consies, you can imagine if you replace the NS with MM, you kind of have the satire and the reference that's going on there. This is very much during the Red Scare and Un-American Activities Committees and such. And so the government and the advertising that funds the government takes that very seriously, and Courtenay ends up interacting with these individuals, who of course are not the boogeymen, and he helps like write their new sort of, and this is sort of the spy fiction part, is how can Courtenay get back to where he wants to be, while interacting with all these people who he thought he knew something about, and now he's kind of shifting his opinion. They don't engage in like active sabotage or anything like that, but it's very fascinating, like mysterious world that he now has to navigate through, and truly like ascend stairways. People, there's so little space that buildings will rent their stairwells for people to sleep in at night, and like grids come up to block off one set of stairs from another set of stairs. It's wild. Dystopic without ever like hitting you over the head with how dystopic it is. And so what's interesting about Courtenay, in science fiction a lot of times we get a character who is heroic, whether male or female or an alien. Heroic is pushed to the limit, is on an adventure and was ready for that adventure and wanted that adventure, and then gets like pulled beyond the limit. With Courtenay we have somebody who does not want the adventure, is not really ready for the adventure, and it gets put into it anyways, and we see that character's growth, which I thought was enjoyable and interesting. So here's how he writes the new, instead of like this thing of, you have been identified as a likely candidate to join our, world conservation movement, and you have three choices. Join us because you're curious and you believe it's right. Betray, the other person, or destroy this and never think about it again. So he turns it into this. Can you qualify for top-level promotion? You and only you can answer these important questions. Are you an intelligent, forward-looking man or woman between the ages of 14 and 50? Do you have the drive and ambition needed to handle the really big jobs tomorrow will bring? Can you be trusted, absolutely trusted, with the biggest, hopefulest news of our time? If you can't stand up and shout yes to every one of these questions, please read no further. But if you can, then you and your friends or family can get in on the ground floor of, and so on. And so we're given a fascinating world that we're dropped into. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'll be interested to read the other books. The next one is More Than Human by Theodore Sturgeon, which includes Baby is 3, and that is in the Science Fiction Hall of Fame Volume 2B, the best novellas. So that third of the book I've already read, and it was very weird, very interesting. So I'll be looking forward to reading that. It also has The Long Tomorrow by Lee Brackett, which is always great when you find a female voice in science fiction, particularly in the 1950s. And then The Shrinking Man by the great Richard Matheson. So I'll be looking forward to the rest of those. Like I said, in terms of the spy work, maybe John le Carré. I was thinking of Lynn Deighton's Funeral in Berlin, where it just feels like a chess match. If you think like that type of sci-fi with consumer like satire is interesting, Triton, also known as Trouble on Triton by Samuel Delany, might interest you. There were shades that reminded me a lot of when I've read Philip K. Dick, specifically some of like Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? The idea that they can purchase real cheese or fake cheese, real real meat or fake meat, like regrown or reprocessed. They have some term for it in the Space Merchants. So 300's Dream of Electric Sheep was reminiscent. I love Gateway by Frederik Pohl. This didn't remind me a lot of it, but I loved this book by the same author. And then Mad Men, the television series, Soylent Green. Doesn't have the same twist as Soylent Green, but that kind of aspect popped into mind. Some of those concerns in that film, and maybe there are aspects of Kurt Vonnegut's science fiction writing that reminds me of it, but no specific work that jumped out in mind. So, anyways, that's The Space Merchants by Frederik Pohl and C.M. Kornbluth. Thank you, everyone.